Hello and good day, and welcome to our eWEEK webinar, where we're going to talk about empowering IT with next generation analytics. This is Aaron Goldberg. I'll be with you today to discuss this important topic, and we're going to spend some time really looking at how to think about using analytics within IT and for IT needs as the business moves to analytics for many of its other functions and aspects of operation, so that we really become a data-driven organization. Now, I'm thrilled to have everybody here with us today, and a couple things I want to remind everyone while you're with us, and that is first to download a copy of the slides in your console. It's in the resources area, and also there are other downloads for you there. Now, to make our information really valuable today, we've enlisted an expert speaker. Ben Newton, Director of Product Marketing and Evangelism at Sumo Logic, is with us. They're a leader in the area of IT analytics. Ben, welcome aboard. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be on. And yeah, I've spent about 20 years in kind of areas surrounding IT operations. I like to say that I was doing DevOps before DevOps was cool or even had a name. And I I spent years actually doing the work, and then moved into kind of space trying to provide solutions for the people doing the work. So I've always been excited about this space, and I'm looking forward to talking with you today.
Great. Well, thanks, Ben. And I want to remind our audience, if you have questions, you can submit them at any time. We'll get back to you with a written email response so you can get answers to your specific areas of information that you need. So let's start into the meat of our matter. Analytics is really, from a general perspective, how modern businesses are run. A key part of digital transformation is that everything becomes digital, so everything throws off a stream of data. And organizations are finding that it's time to move beyond gut feel and intuition. That the ability to make a call or fly by the seat of your pants, or a friend of mine when I was an analyst, George Colony, who actually started Forrester, said he had the golden gut. Those days are over. Digital businesses leverage data and analytics and how they operate their businesses today. That's just the way it is. And there's a lot of reasons for it that we're going to talk about, speed, being able to measure things quickly, react accurately. That's all part of it. And the complexity and speed really make it essential to utilize data to run the company, because if we're not focusing on that hard data, it can really lead us astray in a very dramatic fashion, because all of a sudden you're 2 or 3 turns of the crank behind because you've gone down the wrong path. Your competitors gain an advantage. There's just a whole raft of negative things that come from that.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying makes total sense. And in particular, we talk about it at Sumo Logic here, and we talk about how there's enormous competitive pressures on companies in this space. Because you're either disrupting or you're being disrupted, right? And a big part of that is how you can use data and analytics to make yourself more competitive and drive the business forward. We actually use a term here sometimes, analytics economy, and what we mean by that is that if you can take that enormously valuable data that's being produced in these gigantic quantities. We've actually seen a number from Barclays that is something like 16 zettabytes of machine data is going to be produced by 2020, which was next year. Basically, that is like watching Netflix 30 million times. I mean, it's an enormous amount of data. And so being able to take that data and leverage it for the business, you're creating value. So there's an economy around that. You're creating value with the analytics. So, at Sumo Logic, that's one of the things I'm most excited about is helping people actually, leverage that data and get more out of it, because that's the way they're going to be competitive.
IT isn't immune, and that's probably one of the biggest points we see, is that IT must also become analytics driven. And this is a fundamental change, and it's part of this whole transformation that we're seeing. New digital infrastructure and technologies, they're delivering the data to support analytics. That's one of the things. There's a lot of information to work with. That wasn't always the case. In some organizations, it was kind of, we had have the apps up and running, and we keep an eye on them. That the operations and admin team pretend they're real users, and that's kind of how we look at things. That's not effective, because IT analytics is going to be the foundation for delivering the agility, flexibility, and responsiveness the organization wants and needs. And that agility and that flexibility you can only go in the right direction if you get the data to point the way. And there's another part of it that I think is just part of human behavior, which is when you have data and it's showing you a certainty, it's much easier to make the decision and make the call than it is to second guess yourself and take a long time. That the analysis paralysis is actually untrue with IT analytics because it's analysis enables action and analytics enable action. And it also, more importantly for an IT team, it provides the proof points that show IT excellence and accomplishment. You can actually start documenting the advances that have been made. You can document that service levels are being kept or that you've improved an aspect of operations, and that's really important for marketing your own capabilities. And again, we talk about dynamism, and IT dynamism, it's increased dramatically. Things are moving all the time. The cloud has completely changed how we respond and how fast we can respond. And frankly, analytics is the only way that the executives in IT and the management and admin teams can keep up. The other part of it that's really important is providing documentation, audit trails, and operational communications that are gained from IT analytics. Part of one of the things that IT really needs is documentation of why decisions are made, why things were done the way they were, why a certain approach was taken, and how it actually works out in practice. That is a very important aspect of managing the IT function, and one that I think is quite important here.
When I look back on my previous career, like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I remember I was actually talking with a colleague about this just yesterday. I remember being able to put the entire architecture of this application that I was working on in the early 2000s, and I was able to go into Microsoft Visio, and I made this beautiful architecture diagram, and everybody loved it, and we were like, oh, we understand what's going on, and I look at how most systems are today, and I think they're just so complex. Some of the systems I've seen recently, I mean, they look like spaghetti. There is no Visio diagram to be had, and I think that's a key part of the the pain here, I guess you could say, is that it is very hard to get your arms around that. When I was dealing with these systems in the early 2000s, I did feel like you were saying before, Aaron, I had a gut feel. I knew how these systems work. I had a sense for how things would actually proceed, and I could look at this picture and get a kind of an intuitive sense of what was going on. When you have really the direction where the industry is going and the new technologies that are being adopted, everything from cloud to containerization and things like this, pick your technology, they can become so dynamic and so complex that they're almost organic, and you cannot just intuitively wrap your head around that any more than you can just kind of intuitively understand what bacteria are doing. You really have to use the data to get an insight in it. And I think that's, to your point, that's something that has dramatically changed over the last decade, is that the only way that IT teams stay on top of this and really get ahead of it and not feel like they're just always behind is really to embrace the data, and use that data to benefit and use the analytics. And to your point about the management, I think that's one of the most fascinating trends that I've seen in this, is that how there are other parts of the company that desperately need this insight too, and they're coming to these IT operations organizations looking for that data. I mean, I can think of a couple organizations that I've worked with where you're seeing people all the way up, not only to the what you might expect with a CIO or a VP of IT or VP of engineering. You're seeing CEOs want to look at this data because they need to have that insight. So not only does this provide an opportunity for IT to become more relevant and on top of it by embracing the data, embracing the analytics, there's also an opportunity to provide more value to the rest of the organization by providing these insights to the people that need it, everywhere from engineering to security, but also even up into the C-suite. And I think that's pretty exciting.
Well, one of the ways, and it's an important way to look at analytics, is there are a lot of technology trends driving it. And some people ask, is it analytics first? Is that making these trends possible? Or is it the trends driving analytics? Chicken and egg question. It almost doesn't matter because they actually do go together. And when you start to look at the importance of cross-management platforms, and you look at software-defined data centers and software-defined environments and virtualization and everything as a service, and elastic and scalable infrastructure, and then digital instrumentation and transformation. you know, how many of those impact your company? Because there's almost no one who's immune from this. And even if you're running a smaller data center, maybe say 10 or 12 servers even, it still matters, because one of the things about transformation that's so important is it actually requires small and mid-sized companies to perform like bigger companies and to have the same capabilities. So if you're analytics light and you're competing in an analytics heavy environment, you've got problems.
When I was talking with, I was actually doing some training for some of our new hires yesterday, and as I've been thinking about how to, talk about this, because you have, millennials that are joining our company that don't even, remember what it was like to not have internet. But in some ways, the way I think about this is really, we're reaching a point where this is kind of a culmination of what started in the late 90s and the early 2000s, when you really, maybe you can see the dot-com boom as a, kind of a first big, shot across the bow, and then it's been developing over years. And in some sense, we've learned from the lessons, and this technology has been, adapted and built from, some of these, massive, enterprises like Google, for example, with Kubernetes and containerization, is that we're really coming to a point where a lot of this is coming together, and it's working at a scale that, honestly, if you told me about this in 2001, I would have laughed at you that there would be millions or even billions of users on a platform. And I think that's part of the key here is that there's these massive technological changes that companies are having to grapple with. They don't have a choice, because if they don't grapple with it, they're going to be disrupted. And the reality is your company can't just move, snap your fingers and move from left to right. Maybe if you're lucky enough to be developing a new application, or to be starting fresh as a startup or a smaller company, you can do that. But for the most part, most enterprises, most organizations around are going to have some combination of this. And I think that's part of the key, is being able to embrace the technological trends without feeling like you're putting yourself at risk. And I think that's a I think that's a real key part of the trends going on here, is can I take a hold of these trends, embrace them, enable my teams to innovate so that we're not being disrupted, so that we're moving forward fast without feeling like I'm opening up the company to risk. I'm opening up the company to risk for customer satisfaction by introducing downtime, by introducing problems into this experience for our users, or I'm opening ourselves up to security risk. And again, a big part of that is being able to have visibility into everything that's going on.
So if we talk about deploying effective IT analytics, I say it's non-negotiable, and there's really 5 key reasons why I think that's the case, Ben. First, workloads are changing quickly and are highly dynamic. We're starting to see real-time personalization on the retail front. We're starting to see repetitive analytics on an ongoing basis in real time for machine operations. And to run all this stuff, we also have fewer IT resources. There's just not as many people to manage and administer. So the idea that someone's going to live and die with an application system for years and really understand it, you just can't expect that. If they are, they maybe have 3 or 4 they're working with. Cloud and microservices-based architectures are so dynamic that frankly, you can't manage them the old way. I mean, the reality is that a lot of what we're doing today just demands an analytics approach to operate it, or you're going to fail. And the other part of it is we're starting to see the rise of automated and AI-driven operations. And if you don't have analytic data, you can't run things that way. You can't automate to the level you'd like. You just don't have enough input data for the AI tools or for the automated tools that run operations and make changes, and things like even network routing, to work in an effective manner. And again, we talk about this, but it's so important. IT analytics is how IT communicates with management. You don't want to be the one in the big meeting where everybody else is showing charts and data and your reactions and the impact of different actions, and you're using bullet points and text. It's not an effective way to go about things.
Yeah, I think this is, it's really compelling, and this is one of the reasons why I'm very excited about this space, because again, I think a decade ago, you might have been able to argue that, again, you could go by the gut feel, and now you really can't, because I mean we already talked about how things are so dynamic, and a lot of what I end up talking about when I have opportunities to get in front of people, speak engagements and things like that, a lot of what I talk about is just almost of a sea change of what's going on in this industry. Is that I actually have this slide I like to show that has triangles, where there's kind of a left and a right side dynamic here, and a lot of it really is that there is a big change going on from kind of the previous way things were done, going to the way that things are doing now, and it's can be very hard to embrace. You look on the more traditional side with three-tier architectures, service-oriented architectures running in your own data center. There's um, plenty of things that you can do there. It's kind of easy to wrap your head around. On the right side with some of these newer microservices, cloud, virtualization, you name it, it can be really hard to wrap your head around them. And having these tools at your disposal is absolutely key. And I think you nail it with the automation and AI. I think that's key. I think one thing that I like to say here is I'm a nerd. I like some of these new movies out recently with some of the comic book characters with that. But one of my I like to think that what we need here is we don't need a robot doing things for us. I think that was part of the idea here, is that well, we'll just automate it all away. I don't think that's the way things are working. This is about enabling and empowering IT operations teams and these other technical teams to be able to do more with less. I think you said that earlier, and I think you're absolutely right, because we're literally managing even 3, 4, 5 orders of magnitude more things. You go from a server to a more microservices or container architecture. You're moving in the cloud. The orders of magnitude are mind blowing. You can't do that by just rinsing and repeating. But it doesn't mean that these IT teams aren't equally important. This is actually more about making them able to do more with less, being able to empower them, basically giving them a power suit, instead of just talking about well, we'll just let some sort of AI-based system work on it. And I think that's really where you're going to see the industry going forward, is like, how can we make these teams more effective, and more, and give them, again, more visibility up to the rest of the company, so they can show how effective they're being, and how well they're actually able to drive innovation forward. And you do that, it's all data. It's all data at the end of the day, and data is driven by analytics.
Well, let's talk about meeting that business demand, because if we look at it, we've talked about doing more with less, but there's 4 specific things I see that really talk to the value of IT analytics to meet business demands. First is increasing operational efficiency. Everybody wants to not only do more with less, but we all want to break the old 80-20 rule of IT, where 80% of the resources, or 70% even, go to running the existing systems, only 20 or 30% are around innovation. We want to flip-flop that. Capital demands are a big problem, particularly in a cloud-based world. Asking for capital is something we want to cut. We also want to increase that speed and flexibility, because the business is fast and flexible. It's interesting that for years there was an acceptance that, well, once we kind of get the software design, then we all can wait 2 to 3 months to install, test, and get the infrastructure up and running, and that's just the way life was. That's not the case anymore. And probably the fourth, and to me the most important, is we're also starting to see IT analytics that align with business goals, that we're actually putting all the oars in one direction. As Scott McDeely from Sun Microsystems used to say, we're putting all the wood behind one arrowhead.
I like that expression. I didn't realize he's the one that originally said that. That's great. And yeah, fundamentally, I can. You said it really well. I think the key here is that I think we know now as an industry that software, and kind of more broadly IT, are the drivers of innovation. This, we talk about software eating the world, but what that really means is there's so many businesses that would have called themselves a manufacturing business. They would have called themselves a widget business, whatever it is, and now they're calling themselves a software business. So, really kind of across the industry, and that's because software is really the engine of growth. It's really the engine of innovation, but you can't do that unless you have, basically IT teams that are highly effective and be able to drive that, or else you're making these investments and losing your investment. And so I think this these kind of goals for a team are just absolutely key for being able to get more efficient. And go back to what I was saying before. I think it's about helping these teams. It's not like you're going to go magically find new people that didn't exist before to do this. You got to be able to make the people you have more effective, make them more efficient, and being able to drive more with what you have. Because the reality is that the world's not going to suddenly start slowing down and wait for you to catch up. You've actually got to stay ahead and drive the innovation yourself. If we take a step back and think about some of the key capabilities, and again, it's really interesting how things have both changed and they haven't changed. It's not like there's on some sense that the world of IT is unrecognizable from when I started my career 20 years ago. But in a lot of sense, what have been certain trends have become more focused and become more important. And so if you take a look at some of the key things that are important for IT analytics, one of those is basically having visibility across all of your environments. Because back when you ran your own data center and that was a primary way of doing it, you co-loaded or whatever it was you would do, there was a feeling, I think sometimes unwarranted, but there was a feeling that you could get your arms around it and like, hey, I know what's going on. When you start adopting cloud technologies, which pretty much everyone is doing now to some level, and you're adopting third-party technologies, you're adopting software as a service technologies, there's a sense that maybe you're losing that control. And I think a big part of that is going to be consistent visibility and measurement across all of those environments. And when you start talking about not only moving to one cloud environment, but start doing multi-cloud, it becomes, that much more important that you actually have consistent visibility across all of those. And as part of that, this cannot be just an infrastructure view. I joke a lot of times when I train people in this space is that back when I started, there was the database team and the Windows team and the Linux team and this, that, and the other, and none of them talked and they didn't hang out at lunch and they weren't really friends. And all joking aside, the reality was it was very siloed. And what you're seeing in this new world of that we're in, not only is there technology changing, but the culture is changing, and this means that you need to have a consistent view across both the application and the infrastructure. Not only because you want to have that full end-to-end view, but because your teams are not as siloed as they used to be. They're actually collaborating across these boundaries, and these boundaries that used to be so important that even defined careers are not as important as they used to be. And as part of that, the timing has changed. I think when I started out, being a few hours behind and actually having a little bit of downtime might have almost been acceptable. You literally now, I've talked to companies that measure the revenue lost in seconds and minutes when things are going, basically going sideways. And you cannot get ahead of that if the system you have is behind. It has to be real time. You have to be able to see what's going on as it's going on, because not only so you can find problems as fast as they happen, but as your teams are fixing those problems and they're collaborating on those problems, they need to know immediately when things change. And that really is tied to the next point around scalability. Is that one of the things I've seen a lot of in working with companies that are moving to the cloud and adopting these new architectures, you get surprised about how quickly things change. So one company that I worked with that does IoT, they particularly with Samsung Smart Things, they're an amazing company. They're doing really amazing things with devices, and they had a big marketing campaign that actually, went 10x beyond what they would have expected. And that's not the kind of, difference that you see in traffic and in basically in data, because that's what's effectively what's coming out at the end. You wouldn't have seen that 10, 20 years ago. You might have seen a 1x, a 2x, a 3x. Now you're seeing 10, 20x beyond what you might expect, and you have to be able to adapt to that. And like the way I like to say it is, you have to be able to handle when things are going really, really well, your marketing campaign blew up, or you have to be able to handle when things are going really, really badly because something's broken. and you have to be able to do that in an easy to deploy way. And I think the key to all these things together, and this really kind of ties it together, is the licensing. Because after having been through a few of these different transitions in the IT industry, whenever you see a transition, there's a lagging uh, kind of a lagging of the licensing models catching up to that. And what you're seeing is a lot of the licensing models that are out there are built for static, very slow-moving architectures. They're built to fit what you might have been working in a server-oriented architecture. They're not built to handle cloud. They're not built to handle containers. They're not built to handle microservices. And as you're thinking about the way to buy a solution like this, you cannot um, not consider how it's going to move forward. You have to future-proof it. And a big part of that is you need to buy solutions that are priced the way you would expect a cloud vendor to do it, where it's flexible and it can actually adapt to these different technological mediums, so that you can have a solution that works for your servers, but also works for your almost organically driven containers. And why are these capabilities important? Because the key thing is, I think we've been building up to this, and this is really kind of tying this all together with a bow. Again, the dynamism, you can't overstate the dynamism. You have to be able to handle the dynamism that is this inherent in cloud and in microservices and these technologies. Even if you're not using the cloud and you're adopting microservices or Kubernetes, the dynamism is a key part of that. And that ties into the real-time reaction, because again, like I said, it only takes seconds to lose a customer, and it only takes seconds to take 20 years, several decades of reputation, and lose that and cost the company millions because you didn't catch a security breach. So again, it's very important having these real-time reaction times, and you can only do that if you have a cohesive view of the entire application environment. Because again, what you do not want to be saying to the boss is that, I'm sorry, we couldn't fix this problem because we didn't have that data. I don't know where that is, or I couldn't switch over to this other application. So again, being able to handle all that data in the moment, this is very much about how the data silos are being broken down, the team silos are being broken down. You want to be able to have that at your fingertips. And in particular, using that technology as an enabler, because, again, I don't think analytics is not just something you have to do. It's something that you want to do because it helps you be more efficient, it helps you be more effective, and it helps you communicate with the rest of the organization. And honestly, from a lifestyle perspective, having been, worked in IT for years, this is also about, spending more time on the things that you really care about. Not only spending time on getting home to your family and spending, not having to work those long hours because you can't actually get things done in time, but it's also being able to focus on innovation, and it's being able to do the things that are going to drive the company forward.
Well, Ben, I think you make great points here, and what I'd like to look at is, I think we have to look at all of them. I don't think this is a pick list. I don't think this is something, well, some of this, some of that, two from column A, one from column B. You need to look at all of these things building together to have the right solution and the right service that's really going to provide what everybody needs to have to get things done.
And this is, we come back to the issue around effectiveness. This is really about making teams more effective, and honestly, this is one of the things that I'm most passionate about in my career, is really about making these teams more effective. And a lot of this is around the massive complexity and scalability that you have moving these new architectures. I think we've talked about it a lot so far, so we don't have to repeat a lot of those points. But just emphasizing it, we are talking about orders of magnitude more complexity, more things to manage, and you need to have a system that can actually keep up with that. And it has to be there when you need it. That's an important thing. It actually has to, you don't want, because in particular we I've found now providing analytics solutions for our customers, they depend on you, and you need to know that that solution is going to be there for you when you need it. And then being able to tie this all into a package where you can see both basically performance all the way from the application, understanding how your users are doing that, and then driving that down to the infrastructure, and being able to have that full view, because then you can make more effective, more, let's call it, data-backed decisions that are actually going to drive the business forward.
This issue of moving from tens of servers to hundreds of thousands of containers is a great way to put the scale into context. because not only do we have that, but with DevOps, with all the new applications rolling out, with things moving very quickly, it's a much more complex problem. And it's what's interesting is much like a large manufacturing plant, a refinery, or Boeing, where the entire organization runs based on the analytics and changes are made in real time to analytics. We've seen the same kind of complexity change with the new IT environments. It is so vastly different, and the feedback loops are so short. I think that you make a great point. This is something that's non-negotiable, and this is something where if we aren't able to really hone in on all the metrics that drive, for example, at the tail end, the application performance, if we can't fix that, and we can't maintain that, we are going to see trouble from being measured and managed in seconds.
And kind of getting, back to the point about, again, the organizational elements here. I'm glad that you brought up DevOps again, Aaron, is I think you cannot separate the organizational and cultural changes that are going on from the technology, because the reality is they feed off of each other. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing. They both the technology is driving organizational changes, and the organizational changes are driving technology. And a big part of that has been breaking down silos. Is that we cannot afford basically bureaucratical silos slowing down the company, and you can't do that any more on the technology data side than you can do it on the organizational cultural side. And I think it's really good to view this from a positive perspective. This isn't just a don't do this perspective, it's what can you do? How can IT be seen as a business enabler and as a business accelerator? Well, you do that by taking this data that's just, a core part of what IT does, and then help deliver that to the rest of the company. And now your customer success and support teams, your security teams, even your marketing and sales teams and your leadership can use that data to be able to drive better decision making. And I think in particular, if you look at data science, which anytime you say data, there's immediately going to be a tendency to think about data science, and I think that's particularly important in this case. Is what do data scientists want more than anything? They want data. And the reality is they don't always have the best data. Where does the best data come from? It comes from the systems. It comes from what IT is managing. So if we can start thinking of IT as a data enabler and not just a data protector, I think that's going to be one of the things that's going to drive a lot of companies forward, from an innovation perspective.
It's interesting, and Ben, you make so many good points here. I think the one that just struck me recently is I have a friend who's a CIO of a fairly substantial financial services company. And we were talking. I said, so looking into this year, second half, what's really driving your activity? What's probably the single biggest thing that you're working on? He says, the same thing as the first 6 months. If we don't build a corporate data infrastructure, we failed. Everything else is predicated on the fact that we will have what we need, and this ability to allow the organization to utilize data, I can't stress it enough, because without it, everything grinds to a halt.
And I think that's a great transition to this point here, is that this really is about driving the business forward. This is not just about IT as a kind of an island here. It is really about making the business successful and understanding how this can actually drive the business forward. Being able to first of all make fact-based, data-based decisions for making, basically driving your technology adoption and your technology management forward, and improving that relationship with the business. I think it's so exciting when I've talked with organizations where the leadership in the company is actually excited and engaged with the data, and I think that's really where the most innovative companies in the future are going to be able to interact with data, not only understanding the commitments that are being made in the SLAs and understanding performance, but also understanding how they can improve and drive innovation in the company. And to do that, you really have to be able to improve these data flows, and that's key to your point. I mean, it's great to talk about data lakes and all this and the other, but at the end of the day, this is a very much a technology question, and I think IT teams can be a driver here for the benefit of the larger business.
It really does become that. And, one of the questions I have now, Ben, is, how do we get this done? Can you tell us a little bit about your offering and how you guys approach these challenges? Because they're not simple, they're not easy, but the benefits are just huge.
Absolutely. And I think one of the exciting things here is that this is really a pretty pivotal moment in technology in particular with this set of technologies, because this actually achieving some of these things wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago. The technology wasn't there. The innovative approaches to doing this just weren't there. So a big part of who Sumo Logic is about taking the benefits of cloud and then leveraging that to help our customers succeed. When we were founded just over 8 years ago, it was all about how can we, basically our founders being excited by the vision from AWS about Amazon, about actually what you could do in the cloud, and thinking, hey, what could we actually leverage that technology to provide value to our industry. And that's really a big part of who we are as a company now. We're driving this to customers across industries, across both from small, we deal with startups, all the way to some of the largest companies on the planet, and some of the most innovative companies on the planet. And that's just, I think it's been exciting to see how that's moved forward. From companies that are only sending us several gigabytes a day to companies that are sending us terabytes and tens of terabytes, and just massive amounts of data, and being able to then allow them to analyze that. I mean, part of the key thing here is that the data is not just sitting there. The whole point of this is to make it accessible. So they're running millions of searches across petabytes of data. I mean, it's, again, I remember early 2000s. I remember being so excited about getting it was like 10 or 20 terabyte storage, and we're like, hey, this is so great. Nobody else has this. Now it's like that's just every day. How our customers are being able to leverage it to drive value for their companies. And a few of those things to think about is number one, driving that cloud adoption, but not only just cloud adoption, but being able to drive a hybrid, sophisticated multi-cloud hybrid cloud solution. And that's what we're seeing in enterprises. And a big part of that is actually being able to have visibility across all of those different areas, being able to have visibility across your data center, but also to Google, to Azure, to AWS, and then being able to do that in one platform. And one key point here is we're focusing on IT analytics today, but this applies beyond that. Again, sometimes you hear words like DevSecOps, or there's other terms for that, and really what that comes down to is the key is that you can achieve more than one objective with the same data. So we have customers that are doing both security and development and operational use cases on the same platform, and being able to do that with a licensing model that actually adapts to where they're at. So not all data is created the same. Not all data should be treated the same. So being able to have a flexible model that adjusts to where you are, both from not charging you for your peak usage, but charging you based on what you actually use, but then also being able to adjust to your business cycles. So, hey, you've got Black Friday coming out, you need more data, that's great. You're a newspaper, like New York Times or Washington Post, and you need more, data to handle those, that election coverage. Sure, we can, give that to you. We can give that to you literally in minutes. And we want to drive that with our customers as the focus, both giving them the best possible service. I was actually just in a meeting before this where we were celebrating the guy who runs our customer support organization, and we're just proud to have one of the best CSAT scores in our industry, and that's because we care about making our customers successful and doing that in a way that protects their data, because they depend on us, and security has been a key part of what we've done from the beginning. And if you think about this from a solution perspective, kind of going through this really quickly, but I think we can talk about some of the key elements here. Is number one, this is really about having an end-to-end comprehensive view of what's going on. I think we've talked about that a lot so far in the webinar, and I think here you can see it kind of in specifics, all the way from your traditional installations that are running on-premise or running in some sort of a private cloud situation, to your containerization, to your mobile devices, to third-party apps like Google Apps or Salesforce or whatever that is. Being able to watch all of that data in one consistent environment, and then being able to drive that through a integrated platform. And a simple way to think about that is being able to not only collect and centralize that, because that can be very difficult and time-consuming to do, but then also driving value and insights through that, being able to do real-time dashboards, real-time search, and then being able to allow our customers to be able to drive value through that. And usually the way we express that is three big pillars: is operational analytics, so performance of your application, getting ahead of downtime, handling errors in the application, to looking at security, being able to handle compliance needs, but also being able to do security forensics and getting ahead of basically doing threat analysis, looking for those threats, and basically getting ahead of that and not being caught unaware when basically the world we live in. And then also being able to drive that into the business and being able to drive insights all the way from IT and security to customer success, customer support, even all the way over to into sales and marketing. And and that to me is the key. One of our mottos at Sumo Logic is empowering the people that power modern business, and I think that really sums it up really well. We want to provide a platform where our customers can drive value back into their business, and being able to do more with what they have, and be able to embrace these new technologies and innovate.
Well, let's talk about the key takeaways, Ben. First, and I think we made it clear, analytics is the way business is run, but IT is no exception. Next generation analytics provides the information necessary to support the demands and meet those demands that come from digital businesses. We made a number of points here how the speed of things have changed, the flexibility, the need to move forward. And IT analytics, if it doesn't have the right capabilities, if you're not getting that best-in-class solution, that Sumo Logic delivers, you're going to have problems. Unfortunately, it looks like we're coming to the end of our time for this webinar. We really appreciate your attendance. I want to thank Ben, just a great job today, and I want to thank Sumo Logic for sponsoring our event. Now, don't forget to download a copy of the slides. That's very important, and while you're there, you can take advantage of some resources. We also have a short post-event survey. We like your feedback. We take very seriously that you give us time from your busy day, so we want to know how to make sure we're giving you an optimal event, so please do help us out. And with that, this is Aaron Goldberg, market expert from eWEEK. Have a great day.